Factor, the #1 cable news show for 14 years running.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Bill O'Reilly, reporting from Washington. In the Weekdays with Bernie segment tonight, some very dubious statements made during the election week coverage. We begin with Tom Brokaw speaking about the Democratic defeat.
A lot of this also has to do with the fact that he gets hammered 24/7 by Fox News on the right and by talk radio, which is a huge voice in this country. I was in the Midwest the other day listening to talk radio. I don't know who the guy was, but he was saying Obama's voters are people who live in excrement. That was his phrase. And they expect us to lift them out of excrement. I'm not going to lift a hand.
All right, joining us now from Miami, the purveyor of BernardoGoldberg.com, Mr. Goldberg. So Brokaw seems to be blaming the media for the defeat, but the irony of that is I guess he doesn't watch NBC News because they have a whole cable network devoted to supporting the president and the Democratic Party. I guess he doesn't know that, even though he's appeared on that network a number of times. Go.
Let me stick up for him on one part of what he said. There are some talk radio shows that are low class and vulgar, and he has every right to condemn those. And the example that he gave, that's just bad stuff, and I have no problem with Tom on that. But just as the voters in 2014 rejected the phony so-called Republican war on women, and just as they rejected the vile and phony Republican war on black people, they said enough. It's enough. We've heard this over and over. This time, no, we've had enough. I think it's the same thing with the liberal war on Fox News, okay? When Brokaw talks about how Fox News hammered Obama 24/7, it just feels behind the curve. It just feels like an old, tired argument. And if Fox News is such a boogeyman in our culture, why did so many Americans choose Fox News, obviously voluntarily choose Fox News, to watch election night coverage?
Yeah, I mean,
are they all zombies?
Everybody else? Well, no, but I think they're more traditional-minded people don't trust Tom Brokaw and his ilk. And it's really interesting because Brokaw in his senior years, Rather in his senior years, Cronkite in his senior years, all have come out as very committed leftists. All have really said, you know what? We're on the liberal team. It's very interesting.
That's right. Right. By the way, speaking of just one of those people, Brokaw again, I don't recall that in 2006, when George Bush was being, to use Tom's word, hammered by the liberal media, by the New York Times and the networks on a daily basis, I just don't recall Tom Brokaw bemoaning the fact that the liberal media were hammering him. But when the Democrats lose, then he blames the conservative media. You know, it's just a convenient argument. And I'm telling you, one of the biggest takeaways of this election, in my view, is that the voters have finally rejected this phony war business. And add to that the phony liberal war on Fox News. It just feels tired.
Yeah, it is tired. All right, here is a second dubious statement. Roll the tape.
The problem for the White House has been this. Arguably, the best campaigner our party has was basically locked away in the White House. And in fact, when they were leading attacks against the president was never able to really come out of the White House and defend himself.
Of course he
wait a second.
He could have.
He's partially right, too. I mean, Democrats may have made a mistake. They may have been better off having Obama campaign with them because they couldn't have done any worse.
He's saying he couldn't do it. He certainly could do it if he
exactly.
had wanted
No, that's the second
to
point. That's the second point.
Michelle wasn't tying him up and saying you can't go out, Barack.
Exactly. The reason he was. Yes, well, it wasn't his choice, but it was the Democrats' choice. The reason he was
could have
locked
overridden
up,
that, Bernie.
Well, the reason he was locked up in the White House is because that's exactly where his fellow Democrats wanted him, locked up and as far away from them as possible.
He could have gone out and made speeches and do whatever.
Bill, even if you have Air Force One, you can't fly into Des Moines and say, I'm here to campaign for the Democratic candidate when the Democratic candidate doesn't even show up. I mean,
but
that's
you can
just
do it. You can do a TV spot and you can say my policies have worked and this is why. Now, the dumbest thing, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, the dumbest thing said on election night is this. Roll it.
Right.
The whole sweep, the avalanche that we were told for months that was going to happen for Republicans has not happened. Now, of course, we don't know whether or not they end up with the majority, but we clearly are not being drenched.
I just don't think he lives in America. I think he lives on some planet somewhere.
I'm going to reveal some news here. First of all, Al Sharpton is confusing wishful thinking with political analysis. Okay, and that's why he shouldn't even be a commentator on election night on any network with the initials NBC in it. But Bill, this is, in fairness, this is important. Later in the evening, he acknowledged the obvious. He said there's no denying the fact that there is a wave election for the Republicans. So he finally got around to it. But when he said, and it's not going to happen, he should have taken Yogi's advice. Making predictions are hard, especially when they're about the future. He should have let it go without saying, and it ain't going to happen, because it did happen.
Bernie Goldberg, everybody. Laura Ingraham on deck. Did Governor Brown attend the funeral services for 2 California police officers killed by a criminal alien? That's next.